They laughed when the outcast girl brought elephant cookies to the Christmas social. They stopped laughing when the most dangerous man in town tasted one. In Red Hollow, humiliation was a sport, and Eliza Rowan had always been the favorite target. Tonight would be different. Tonight, she'd either break completely or find something worth fighting for. One tray of misshapen cookies, one room full of wolves in fancy dresses, one decision that would change everything. Stay until the end to see how a woman with nothing becomes everything. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The snow fell heavy that December evening, coating Red Hollow's main street in a blanket of white that almost made the town look pure. Almost. Eliza Rowan knew better. She'd lived here 23 years, long enough to understand that beauty in this place was always surface level, hiding something rotten underneath. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the cloth covering her tray. Not from the cold, though the wind cut through her threadbare coat like a knife. No, this was fear, the kind that lived in your stomach and climbed up your throat when you knew you were walking into a den of predators wearing your Sunday worst. The Pritchard estate loomed ahead, every window blazing with warm light. Music drifted out into the night. A piano, laughter, the clink of crystal glasses. The annual Christmas social, where Red Hollow's finest gathered to celebrate the season and remind everyone else exactly where they stood in the town's hierarchy. Eliza had no business being here. She knew it. They knew it. But her stepmother Margaret had insisted with that smile that never reached her eyes. "You'll attend," Margaret had said that morning, standing in the kitchen doorway like a warden. "And you'll bring something to contribute. I won't have people saying I raised you without manners." Raised? That was rich. Margaret had married Eliza's father when Eliza was 15, tolerated her for 3 years while he was alive, and spent the 5 years since making sure Eliza understood she was nothing more than an unwanted burden. "What should I bring?" Eliza had asked, knowing the question itself was a trap. "Figure it out. You're not completely useless, are you?" So Eliza had baked. Using the last of the flour and sugar she'd hidden away, she'd made the only recipe she knew by heart, her father's elephant cookies. Ginger and molasses, cut into shapes that never quite looked right, decorated with a simplicity that would seem childish next to the elaborate confections the other women would bring. Her father had made them every Christmas. Said they were special because they looked different, tasted different, reminded people that not everything worth having came perfect and polished. Eliza wished she believed that tonight. She climbed the steps to the Pritchard mansion, her boots leaving dark prints on the pristine white porch. Through the frosted glass of the front door she could see them. Women in silk and velvet, men in tailored suits, everyone beautiful and belonging in a way she never would. The door opened before she could knock. Thomas Pritchard stood there, his face already shifting from polite greeting to poorly concealed surprise. "Miss Rowan." He didn't move aside. "I wasn't aware you'd been invited. My stepmother received an invitation for our household." It wasn't quite a lie. Margaret had received one, with the typical note that she was welcome to bring family. Thomas's jaw tightened, but breeding won out over rudeness. Barely. "Of course. Do come in." The entrance hall was everything Eliza's home wasn't. Polished marble floors, a chandelier dripping with crystals, walls painted in rich burgundy and gold. The air smelled of cinnamon and pine and expensive perfume. Conversation died in ripples as she stepped inside. Eliza had known it would happen, prepared for it even. But preparation didn't stop the hot flush of shame that crept up her neck as dozens of eyes landed on her, assessed her, and found her wanting. Her dress was clean but old-fashioned, made over from one of her mother's gowns. Her hair, though carefully pinned, had none of the elaborate curls the other women sported. And her face, plain, her stepmother called it. "Unfortunate," said the kinder folk. "Homely," said everyone else. "Eliza Rowan." The voice cut through the silence like a blade. "What a surprise." Constance Fairfax glided forward, resplendent in emerald silk that probably cost more than Eliza's entire wardrobe. Beautiful, wealthy, and cruel in the way only people who'd never faced real hardship could be. "Mrs. Fairfax?" Eliza dipped her head, hating herself for the automatic deference. "I didn't realize the invitation extended to—" Constance paused, her smile sharpening. "Everyone." Titters erupted around them, soft, polite laughter that felt like being cut with velvet-wrapped glass. "I brought something for the dessert table." Eliza lifted her tray slightly. the cloth shifting to reveal one corner of her cookies. Constance's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. How quaint! Martha, dear, do take Miss Rowan's contribution to the kitchen. A servant materialized at Eliza's elbow, reaching for the tray. For one wild moment, Eliza wanted to pull it back, turn around, and leave. Let them think whatever they wanted. She'd survived worse than gossip. But Margaret would know, and Margaret's displeasure had a way of making Eliza's already difficult life unbearable. She released the tray. Actually, Constance said, her voice bright with false enthusiasm, why don't we display it now? I'm sure everyone would love to see what you've made. Eliza's stomach dropped. That's not necessary. Nonsense, we're all family here, aren't we? Constance took the tray from the servant, carrying it to a nearby table with exaggerated care. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Rowan has brought us a treat. The crowd pressed closer. Eliza wanted to disappear into the floor. Constance pulled back the cloth with a flourish. The silence that followed was worse than laughter. Eliza's cookies sat on the tray in their misshapen glory. Some were too thick, others too thin. The icing had run on a few, making them look melted and sad. Next to the elaborate cakes and delicate pastries that filled the other tables, they looked exactly like what they were, the best effort of someone with almost nothing. Are those? Millicent Parker leaned in, squinting. Animals? Elephants, Eliza said quietly. Elephants! Constance's laugh was silver and sharp. How perfectly whimsical. Tell me, dear, what inspired such a choice? There was no good answer. The truth, that her father had made them, that they represented the last good memories she had, would only give them more ammunition. But silence would be taken as stupidity. My father's recipe, she said. How sentimental. Constance picked up one cookie, examining it like a curiosity in a museum. Though I must say they're rather rustic, aren't they? They look like a child made them, someone whispered, not quite soft enough. More laughter. Bolder now. Eliza's hands clenched at her sides. She'd known this would happen. Known it and come anyway because what choice did she have? Margaret would make her life hell if she didn't attend, and the town would talk regardless. At least this way, she could say she'd tried. The shapes are quite irregular, Constance continued, warming to her audience. And the icing is, well, perhaps Miss Rowan was going for an artistic interpretation. Of what? Someone called out. A disaster. The room erupted in laughter. Not polite titters anymore, but real amusement at her expense. Eliza felt something inside her begin to crack. The same something that had been fracturing for 5 years, ever since her father died and left her at Margaret's mercy. The part of her that still believed she deserved dignity, respect, a place in the world. I think they're rather sweet, Constance said, biting into the cookie. Her face immediately twisted. Oh my, that's quite a flavor. She set the cookie down quickly, reaching for a napkin. The implication was clear. The taste matched the appearance. Perhaps they're an acquired taste, Millicent offered, though her smile said otherwise. Perhaps they're not fit for human consumption, someone else said, and the laughter rolled louder. Eliza's vision blurred. She would not cry. Not here, not in front of them. She'd give them many things tonight, humiliation, entertainment, a story to tell at future gatherings, but she would not give them tears. I should go. Her voice came out steady, which felt like a small victory. So soon? Constance's pout was mocking. But you just arrived, and we haven't even properly welcomed you. I'm not feeling well. I imagine not. Constance's eyes glittered with satisfaction. Perhaps next time you'll remember that some gatherings require a certain standard. The words hit like a slap. Not because they were particularly clever, but because they confirmed what Eliza had always known. She would never be good enough for this town. Not her cooking, not her appearance, not her existence. She turned toward the door, her cheeks burning, her chest tight with the effort of keeping her composure. Hold on now. The voice was male, rough-edged, and completely unfamiliar in this crowd of refined tones. Eliza stopped, but didn't turn around. Those elephant cookies. Who made them? The room had gone quiet again, but this silence felt different, charged with something Eliza couldn't identify. Miss Rowan did, Constance said, her voice suddenly uncertain. Though I'm not sure why that matters, Mr. Maddox. They're hardly... I'd like to try one. Footsteps crossed the marble floor, heavy boots that had no business on polished stone. Eliza turned despite herself. The man standing by the dessert table was everything the other men in the room weren't. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that looked like it was strangling him. His face weathered by sun and wind in a way that said he spent more time outdoors than in parlors like this. Dark hair, longer than fashionable, and eyes that seemed to take in everything with one sweeping glance. Cole Maddox. She knew the name, though they'd never spoken. Everyone in Red Hollow knew the Maddox Ranch. 10,000 acres of prime grazing land north of town, run by three brothers who kept to themselves and had a reputation for being fair but hard. Cole was the eldest, and the one people crossed the street to avoid when he came to town. He picked up one of her cookies. "Mr. Maddox," Constance said quickly, you really don't have to—" He bit into it. The room held its breath. Cole chewed slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he took another bite, and another, until the cookie was gone and he was reaching for a second one. "These are good," he said. Constance laughed nervously. "You're too kind, but I'm not kind." Cole's voice was flat, brooking no argument. "And I don't lie about food. These taste like my grandmother's Christmas cookies. Ginger, molasses, real butter. None of that fancy nonsense that looks pretty but tastes like air." He turned to look at Eliza for the first time, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "You make these yourself?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "From scratch? No store-bought dough?" "From scratch. My father's recipe." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. "He taught you well." "Mr. Maddox," Thomas Pritchard stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. "While we appreciate your input, I'm sure Miss Rowan understands that her contribution, while earnest, doesn't quite meet the standards of—" "Standards." Cole turned the word over like it tasted bad. "That what we're calling cruelty now?" Thomas's face reddened. "I beg your pardon? I've been standing in this room for 10 minutes watching grown adults mock a woman for having the courage to participate, for bringing something homemade and honest to a party full of expensive nothings bought from bakeries in Denver." Cole's gaze swept the crowd, and people actually stepped back. "You want to talk about standards? How about the standard of basic human decency?" "Now see here," Constance began. "No, you see here." Cole's voice didn't rise, but it filled the room anyway. "Miss Rowan brought food made with her own hands. Food that tastes like home and memory and effort. And instead of thanking her, you turned her into tonight's entertainment." "We were only having a bit of fun," Millicent protested weakly. "At whose expense?" Cole picked up another cookie, holding it up. "These aren't perfect. The shapes are off, the icing's messy. But they're real, which is more than I can say for most of what I've seen here tonight." Eliza stared at him, unable to process what was happening. Men didn't defend her. People didn't take her side. That wasn't how her world worked. "Furthermore," Cole continued, his attention back on Thomas, "I came here tonight because you've been trying to buy grazing rights to my south pasture. Told my foreman the deal was practically done, just needed to butter me up at a social gathering." Thomas's confident expression crumbled. "Consider that negotiation over. I don't do business with people who lack character." Cole set the cookie down carefully. "And I've seen enough tonight to know exactly what kind of character this room holds." He turned and walked toward Eliza. She tensed, unsure what to expect. "Miss Rowan?" He stopped a respectful distance away. "Would you allow me to escort you home? I think we've both had enough of this gathering." Eliza's mind raced. Accept help from Cole Maddox, the man half the town feared and the other half didn't trust? Or stay here and endure more humiliation? Not really a choice at all. "Yes, thank you." He offered his arm. She took it, feeling the solid strength of him through the fabric of his coat. They walked toward the door together, the crowd parting like water. No one spoke. No one dared. At the threshold, Cole paused, glancing back at the room. "Merry Christmas," he said, and it sounded like a curse. Then they were outside, the cold air hitting Eliza's face like a blessing. Her legs trembled as they descended the steps, the adrenaline of the past 20 minutes finally catching up with her. "Are you all right?" Cole's voice was quieter now, less sharp. "I don't know." It was the most honest answer she had. They reached the street before she found more words. Why did you do that? Cole was quiet for a moment, their footsteps crunching in the snow. My grandmother raised me and my brothers after our parents died. Worked herself to the bone keeping that ranch running, and every Christmas, no matter how tired she was, she made cookies. They never looked like much, but they tasted like love. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Your cookies tasted exactly the same. And watching those vultures tear you apart for something that honest, I couldn't stomach it. Eliza felt tears prick her eyes, but for an entirely different reason than before. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, just... He hesitated, seeming to wrestle with something. Just don't let them make you believe their cruelty means anything about your worth. It doesn't. Easy to say when you're Cole Maddox. A bitter smile crossed his face. You think my name protects me from judgment? Half this town thinks I'm one bad day away from burning it down. The other half is just waiting for proof. Are they wrong? He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Maybe not, but that's beside the point. They started walking again. Eliza's house was only 6 blocks from the Pritchard estate, but it felt like a different world. Smaller homes, less decoration, people who worked for their living instead of inheriting it. Where's your family tonight? Cole asked. My stepmother went to a different gathering. She didn't want to be seen arriving with me. Sounds like a peach. Despite everything, Eliza smiled. That's one word for her. They reached her house, a modest 2-story that had seen better days, paint peeling, shutters loose, the whole place radiating neglect. This is me, Eliza said, suddenly embarrassed by how shabby it looked. Cole studied the house with an unreadable expression. You live here alone? With your stepmother? Yes. No other family? No. Something in his face shifted, but before Eliza could interpret it, he stepped back. Well, thank you for the escort, even if it was backwards. He tipped his hat. And Miss Rowan? Keep making those cookies. They're the best thing I've tasted in years. He turned to leave. Mr. Maddox? He looked back. Thank you for what you did. No one's ever... She struggled for words. No one's ever stood up for me like that. His expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. Then people around here are bigger fools than I thought. He walked away, disappearing into the snowy night, leaving Eliza standing on her porch, wondering if the entire evening had been some kind of fever dream. The wondering ended the moment she opened the front door and saw Margaret waiting in the parlor, her face twisted with fury. What, Margaret hissed, did you do? Eliza's brief moment of warmth evaporated. I went to the social, like you told me to, and embarrassed this entire household. I've already received 3 messages about your spectacle at the Pritchard estate. 3. Do you have any idea what people are saying? That I brought cookies to a Christmas party? Margaret's hand cracked across Eliza's face before she saw it coming. Don't be smart with me, girl. You made us look like fools. Showing up with those pathetic cookies, drawing attention from that Maddox brute, creating a scene. I didn't create anything. They mocked me, and he defended me. Defended you? Margaret's laugh was vicious. Cole Maddox doesn't defend people out of kindness. He does it to start trouble, and now our family is associated with that trouble. Your family, not mine. The second slap was harder. Eliza's ears rang as Margaret grabbed her arm, nails digging in through the fabric of her dress. You are nothing, do you understand? Your father left me saddled with you and this house and debts I'm still paying off. The only reason I haven't thrown you out is because it would reflect poorly on me, but my patience has limits. Then stop being patient. The words came out before Eliza could stop them, years of swallowed anger rising like bile. Throw me out. I'd rather freeze than spend another night under your roof. Margaret's eyes glittered with something ugly and triumphant. Careful what you wish for, girl. She released Eliza's arm with a shove, sending her stumbling back against the wall. Go to your room, and don't come down until I tell you to. I need to think about how to handle this mess you've created. Eliza climbed the stairs on shaking legs, her face throbbing where Margaret had struck her. In her room, barely more than a closet with a bed, she sat on the thin mattress and stared at the wall. The night had started with cookies and ended with violence. Nothing had really changed. Except it had. For 20 minutes at the Pritchard estate, someone had seen her, not the humiliation or the mockery, but her, The effort she'd made, the courage it took to show up, the worth in something homemade and honest. Cole Maddox had seen her. And tomorrow, when Margaret's anger cooled into the familiar cold calculation, Eliza would pay for that moment of visibility. She always did. But tonight, alone in her room with snow falling outside her window, she let herself remember the taste of being defended, of being worth defending. It wouldn't last. Nothing good ever did. But for now, it was enough. Eliza woke to darkness and cold. Not the usual cold of a poorly heated room, but the bone-deep chill that came from no heat at all. She sat up, confused, her breath visible in the air. The window showed early dawn, the sky that pale gray that came before sunrise. She'd slept maybe 4 hours, her face still tender from Margaret's hand. Then she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate, coming toward her room. The door flew open. Margaret stood there, fully dressed, her face set in lines of grim satisfaction. "Get up." Eliza pulled the thin blanket around her shoulders. "It's barely dawn." "I said get up." Margaret's voice was ice. "And pack whatever you can carry. You have 10 minutes. Eliza's stomach dropped. "What?" "You heard me. I've made my decision. You want it out of my house? You're getting your wish. You can't just—" "I can do whatever I want. This is my house, bought with my late husband's money, such as it was. You're not family. You're not even legally my responsibility anymore. You're 23 years old and capable of supporting yourself." Eliza stood, her legs unsteady. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my concern." Margaret's smile was thin and cruel. "You made your choice last night when you humiliated me in front of the entire town. Actions have consequences, Eliza. Perhaps you'll learn that wherever you end up." "It's the middle of winter. I'll freeze." "Then I suggest you figure something out quickly." Margaret stepped aside, gesturing to the hallway. 10 minutes. After that, I'm locking this door, and anything left inside becomes mine." She walked away, her footsteps echoing on the wooden stairs. Eliza stood frozen for a moment, her mind refusing to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. Margaret had threatened before, made her life miserable in 100 small ways, but this? The sound of Margaret moving around downstairs snapped her into motion. She had no luggage, just a canvas bag her father had used for traveling. She pulled it from under the bed and started grabbing things. Her other dress. 2 pairs of stockings, both darned at the heels. The shawl her mother had made. A hairbrush. The small tin where she kept the few coins she'd managed to save from occasional sewing work. Her hand shook as she counted. $2.37. That was everything she had in the world. On the small shelf by her bed sat the only photograph she owned. Her parents on their wedding day, young and happy, and unaware of how short their time together would be. She wrapped it carefully in a handkerchief and tucked it into the bag. What else? She looked around wildly. Clothes, a few personal items, her mother's Bible. She paused, then left it. Margaret could have it. The words inside had never done much for Eliza anyway. Her father's recipe book. She grabbed it, the pages brittle with age, his handwriting familiar and painful. Then she spotted the small jar on the windowsill, the last of the molasses from yesterday's baking. "Time's up!" Margaret's voice rang from downstairs. Eliza shoved the jar into her bag, threw on her coat, thin and patched, inadequate for December, and grabbed her worn boots. She made it to the bottom of the stairs just as Margaret appeared in the parlor doorway. "Out!" Margaret pointed to the front door. "And don't come back. If I see you on this property again, I'll have the sheriff arrest you for trespassing. This was my father's house. Your father's debts are what it was. I paid them, every cent, which means I own it, free and clear. You own nothing." Eliza wanted to argue, to fight, to demand the basic human decency of at least waiting until the sun was fully up. But Margaret's expression made it clear that any resistance would only make things worse. She walked to the door, her bag heavy on her shoulder. Eliza. She turned, hating the small spark of hope that maybe Margaret had reconsidered. "Don't think anyone in this town will help you. I've made sure they know exactly what kind of person you are. Ungrateful, difficult, a burden no one needs." The words landed like stones. Eliza opened the door and stepped out into the freezing morning. Behind her, she heard the lock click into place with a finality that echoed in her chest. The street was empty. No witnesses to her exile. No one to see Margaret Rowan's unwanted stepdaughter cast out like garbage. That was intentional, Eliza realized. Margaret had waited until the darkest part of morning, when even the earliest workers weren't yet stirring. She stood on the porch for a moment trying to form a plan, but there was no plan. She had no family, no friends, nowhere to go. The few people she knew from church barely acknowledged her existence, and after last night, the entire town probably saw her as either a joke or a troublemaker. The cold bit through her coat. She needed to move, to find shelter, to think. She started walking with no destination in mind. Just away. Away from Margaret's house, away from the silent judgment of her neighbors' windows, away from the life that had finally, completely fallen apart. The sun rose slowly, painting the snow pink and gold, beautiful and utterly indifferent to her situation. By the time Red Hollow began to wake, Eliza had walked to the edge of town. Her feet ached, her fingers were numb despite being shoved in her pockets, and she still had no idea where she was going. The main road stretched north toward the open country. South led to Denver, 60 miles away. East was nothing but empty plains. West was the Maddox Ranch. The thought appeared unbidden and immediately felt ridiculous. What was she going to do? Show up at Cole Maddox's door begging for help? The man had defended her once. That didn't make him responsible for her. But as the morning grew colder and her options remained non-existent, the ridiculous idea started to seem less insane. He'd said the cookies reminded him of his grandmother. He'd stood up for her when no one else would. He'd called the food honest. Maybe Eliza Rowan? She spun around, her heart jumping. A wagon had pulled up behind her, steam rising from the horse's breath in the cold air. The driver was middle-aged, weathered, wearing a heavy coat and a concerned expression. "You all right, miss? You look half frozen." "I'm fine." The lie was automatic. "You're a terrible liar." The man climbed down from the wagon. "Name's Frank Miller. I work for the Maddox Ranch. You're the girl Cole was talking about this morning." Eliza's mind stuttered. "He was talking about me?" "Came back from town last night, madder than I've seen him in years. Told us what happened at that fancy party. Said if we saw you around, we were to treat you decent." Frank looked her over, taking in the bag, the inadequate coat, the way she was shivering. "Looks like you could use more than decent right now." "I was just..." "What? Walking aimlessly into the wilderness?" "I was just going for a walk. In December, before dawn, with all your worldly possessions." Frank's tone was dry, but not unkind. "Listen, it's none of my business what happened, but you look like you could use a warm meal and a place to sit for a minute. Ranch is only 3 miles up the road. Why don't you come with me?" "I couldn't impose..." "You're not imposing if I'm inviting." Frank gestured to the wagon. "Come on, before we both freeze solid." Eliza hesitated. Pride warred with desperation, and desperation won by a landslide. She climbed into the wagon. Frank didn't ask questions as they drove, which Eliza appreciated more than she could say. Instead, he talked about the weather, the ranch, the way the cattle were handling the cold. Normal conversation that almost made her feel human again. The Maddox Ranch appeared gradually. First fences, then outbuildings, finally the main house and barn complex. It was bigger than she'd expected, sprawling and practical, built for function rather than show. Several men were working in the yard, tending to horses and equipment despite the early hour. They looked up as the wagon approached, their expressions curious. Frank pulled the wagon to a stop near the barn. "Wait here a minute. I'll find Cole." He disappeared into the barn, leaving Eliza sitting in the wagon feeling exposed and ridiculous. What was she doing here? This was insane. Cole Maddox didn't owe her anything, and showing up like this... "Miss Rowan." She looked down. Cole stood beside the wagon, his expression unreadable. He wore work clothes now instead of the ill-fitting suit from last night and looked far more comfortable. "Mr. Maddox, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to... Frank offered me a ride and I didn't realize... I'll go." "Go where?" The question stopped her. I don't know." "Frank said he found you walking north out of town at dawn. That true?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole's jaw tightened. "Your stepmother?" "She thought it was time I found my own way. In December, with nowhere to go." She didn't ask my opinion on the timing. Something dangerous flashed in Cole's eyes, but his voice remained calm. "Come inside. You look half dead." "I don't want to be a burden. If you were a burden, I wouldn't have invited you." He held up a hand to help her down from the wagon. "Come on." Eliza took his hand, feeling the calluses and strength in his grip. Her feet hit the ground and her legs nearly buckled. She'd walked further than she'd realized. Cole steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday. Lunch." He muttered something under his breath that sounded like cursing. "This way." He led her not to the main house, but to a smaller building that turned out to be a kitchen and dining hall. Warm air enveloped her the moment they stepped inside, and the smell of coffee and bacon made her stomach clench with hunger. An older man stood at the stove, graying hair pulled back in a ponytail, arms scarred from years of cooking. He turned as they entered, his eyebrows rising. "Cole, didn't expect to see you back so soon." "Sam, this is Miss Eliza Rowan. She needs food and coffee, possibly in that order." Sam's eyes sharpened as he took in Eliza's appearance. "Sit down, miss. I'll get you fixed up." Eliza sank into a chair at the long wooden table, her legs grateful for the rest. Cole sat across from her, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. "So," he said quietly, "your stepmother kicked you out. She has that right. It's her house. Legal right doesn't make it decent. Decency hasn't been Margaret's strong suit for a while now." Sam appeared with a mug of coffee. Eliza wrapped her hands around it, the warmth almost painful against her frozen fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "Food's coming." Sam returned to the stove, and Eliza could feel him listening even though he pretended to focus on cooking. Cole leaned forward, his voice low. "What's your plan?" "I don't have one yet. I thought maybe I could get to Denver, find work. Denver's 60 miles. You have money for the stage?" Her silence was answer enough. "Thought so." Cole drummed his fingers on the table, clearly thinking. "You can cook, right? The cookies weren't a fluke?" "I can cook. My mother taught me before she died, and I've been doing all the cooking at Margaret's house for years." "How are you with large quantities?" "Feeding 15 hungry men 3 times a day." Eliza's heart started to beat faster. "I've never cooked for that many, but I'm a fast learner." Cole glanced at Sam, who was plating up eggs and bacon. Some unspoken communication passed between them. "Our cook quit 2 weeks ago," Cole said. "Went back east to be with family. Sam's been covering, but he's getting too old for the work, and we've been trying to find a replacement." "I'm not too old," Sam protested, setting a plate in front of Eliza. "I'm experienced. You're 73, and your back goes out every time you lift a pot." "Twice." "It's gone out twice." Cole ignored him, his attention on Eliza. "I'm offering you a job. Cook for the ranch, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. In exchange, you get room and board and $30 a month." Eliza stared at him, the food forgotten. "You don't know if I can even cook for that many people. So prove it. Work today, see how it goes. If it's a disaster, we'll figure something else out. But if you can handle it," he shrugged, "job's yours as long as you want it." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "Why are you helping me?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his expression serious. "Because someone should, and because I need a cook. Sometimes situations work out for everyone involved." It was too convenient, too easy. There had to be a catch. But sitting in the warm kitchen with food in front of her and nowhere else to go, Eliza couldn't bring herself to question it too hard. "What about—" She hesitated. "People will talk. A woman living on a ranch with 15 men. People already talk about me. And anyone who works this ranch knows that harassment means instant dismissal, no exceptions." Cole's voice hardened. "You'll have your own room with a lock. You'll be treated with respect. And if anyone has a problem with that arrangement, they can take it up with me." Sam snorted. "No one's stupid enough to take anything up with you when you're in this mood." "What mood?" "The one where you're deciding whether to ride into town and have words with a certain stepmother." Cole's expression went dark. The thought crossed my mind. "Don't." Eliza surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "Please, it'll only make things worse." "Worse than being thrown out in winter?" "Worse for me. If you confront her, she'll find a way to blame me. She always does. Better to just let it go." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment he nodded. "Your call." Eliza turned her attention to the food. The first bite of eggs tasted like salvation. She tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but her body had other ideas. Within minutes, the plate was empty. Sam wordlessly brought her another helping. "Easy," Cole said. "Don't make yourself sick." I'm fine, but she forced herself to slow down. As she ate, the kitchen door opened and 3 men filed in, stopping short when they saw Eliza. "Morning, boss," one of them said, his eyes darting between Cole and Eliza with obvious curiosity. "Didn't know we had company." "This is Miss Rowan. She's going to try her hand at cooking for us today. Miss Rowan, this is Jack, Pete, and Henry." The men nodded, trying not to stare. "Where's Frank?" Cole asked. "Tending to that mare with the bad hoof," Jack replied. He was young, maybe 20, with a friendly face and openly curious expression. "Is this the lady from the party last night?" "Jack!" Cole's voice held a warning. "What?" "I'm just asking. Frank said you defended her honor like something out of a storybook." "Frank talks too much." "Frank's version had you throwing Thomas Pritchard through a window." "That's because Frank's a liar." Pete, older and more reserved, cleared his throat. "Welcome to the ranch, Miss Rowan. Hope you're ready for a challenge. These boys eat like they're hollow." "I'll do my best," Eliza said. The men grabbed coffee and headed back out, but not before Jack shot her an encouraging smile. When they were gone, Sam handed Eliza an apron. "Kitchens through there, pantries stocked, ice boxes full, dinners at noon for the day crew, 6 for everyone else. Breakfast is whenever they wander in, usually between 5 and 7. Eliza stood, her legs steadier now. "What are they like?" "Food that's hot and plentiful. Beyond that, they're not picky." Sam's eyes twinkled. "Well, except for Marcus, he doesn't eat pork." "For religious reasons?" "Stubbornness reasons." His daddy was a pig farmer, and Marcus hated every minute of his childhood. Despite everything, Eliza felt a smile tug at her lips. "Good to know." Sam showed her around the kitchen, a large, well-equipped space that had clearly been designed by someone who understood cooking. Cast iron stoves, good knives, plenty of counter space, windows that let in light without letting out heat. "Cole's grandmother designed this kitchen," Sam said, watching her take it all in. "She ran this ranch for 20 years after her husband died. Fed crews twice this size and never complained once." "What happened to her?" "Passed about 5 years back. Pneumonia. Cole took it hard. She raised him and his brothers after their parents died." That explained the cookies, Eliza thought. Why he'd defended her so fiercely. "Right then." Sam rolled up his sleeves. "Let's see what you can do. Noon meal feeds about 12 today. Rest are out on the far pastures and won't be back until tonight." Eliza tied on the apron and surveyed the pantry. Flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, canned vegetables, fresh potatoes, and onions. The icebox held beef, chicken, butter, milk. She could work with this. "How about beef stew, cornbread, and apple cobbler for dessert?" Sam's eyebrows rose. "Ambitious, you sure?" "I'm sure I can try." "Good enough for me." Sam pulled out a stool. "I'll supervise, meaning I'll sit here and make sure you don't burn the place down." Eliza started with the stew, browning beef in batches, while Sam directed her to various ingredients and tools. It felt good to work with her hands, to have a purpose, to create something. As the morning progressed, more men filtered through for coffee and breakfast. Each one was introduced, each one assessed her with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. She couldn't blame them. She was skeptical too. But the beef simmered, the cornbread rose, and the cobbler came together with the efficiency of muscle memory. Her mother's training, refined by 5 years of cooking for Margaret's critical palate. Cole reappeared around 11:30, watching from the doorway as she worked. "Smells good," he said. "We'll see if it tastes good." Eliza stirred the stew, adjusting the seasoning. "Sam, can you check this?" Sam tasted, considered, nodded. "That'll do. That'll do just fine." At noon, the men began filing in. Eliza served them with hands that only shook a little, watching their faces as they took their first bites. Silence fell. Then Pete spoke up. "This is damn good." Agreement rippled through the group. Seconds were requested, then thirds. The cornbread disappeared in minutes. The cobbler was gone before Eliza could even think about saving some. Jack leaned back in his chair, groaning. "Miss Rowan, if you cook like this every day, I'm never leaving this ranch." "You weren't leaving anyway," Henry pointed out. "You're broke." "True, but now I have a reason beyond poverty." Laughter filled the kitchen. Easy, genuine laughter that had nothing to do with mockery and everything to do with good food and full bellies. Eliza felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. Cole caught her eye from across the room and nodded once. Approval and acknowledgement wrapped into a single gesture. The job was hers if she wanted it. As the men filtered out, heading back to work, Sam started helping her clean up. "You did good, girl. Better than good." "Thank you." Eliza scrubbed a pot, her arms aching but her mind clearer than it had been in hours. "Sam, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Why is Cole really doing this? The truth." Sam was quiet for a long moment, his hands still in the soapy water. "Cole Maddox is a hard man, has to be running this place, but he's got a thing about people being treated unfairly. Sees it, he has to act, can't help himself." "That's why he defended me?" "That's part of it. The other part?" Sam dried his hands, looking at her directly. His grandmother used to say the measure of a person wasn't how they treated their equals, but how they treated those with nothing to offer in return. Cole took that to heart. "I have nothing to offer." "You have skills and willingness to work. Around here, that's worth more than money or status." Sam left her to finish cleaning, and Eliza worked in the quiet kitchen, processing everything that had happened in the span of 12 hours. Last night, she'd been humiliated. This morning, she'd been homeless. Now she had a job, a place to sleep, and something resembling purpose. It felt fragile, like if she moved too quickly or hoped too hard, it would all shatter. The door opened and Cole entered carrying a wooden crate. "For your room," he said, setting it down. "Saw you didn't have much with you." Eliza opened the crate. Inside were blankets, a pillow, a lamp, and a few other necessities. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to." "I did if I want you to stay comfortable." He shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncomfortable himself. "Your room's in the east wing of the main house. Sam will show you. It's small but private, has a good lock. I'm sure it's fine." "It's not fine, it's adequate, but it's yours as long as you're here." Eliza met his eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Cole considered the question seriously. "Because kindness is free, and I've got plenty to spare. And because—" He paused. "Because I know what it's like to be judged for things you can't control. My family's been the talk of this town for 30 years, not always in good ways. You don't seem to care what people think." "I don't. But it took me a long time to get there." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Make yourself at home, Miss Rowan, and if anyone gives you trouble, anyone, you come find me immediately." "I can handle trouble." "I'm sure you can, but you shouldn't have to. Not here." He left, and Eliza stood alone in the kitchen that was now hers to command. Through the window, she could see the ranch spreading out in all directions, land and sky and possibility. It wouldn't last. Good things never did. But maybe, just maybe, she could hold on to it long enough to build something stronger. She picked up the crate and went to find her room, ready to start over for the 100th time in her life. This time, though, felt different. This time, she wasn't alone. 3 weeks passed like water finding its level. Eliza settled into the rhythm of ranch life with a speed that surprised even her. Up before dawn to start breakfast, midday meals that had the men coming back early just to eat, evenings spent preparing for the next day while the last light died outside the kitchen windows. The room Cole had given her was small, tucked into a corner of the main house, with a window facing east. She woke each morning to pale sunlight and the sound of men moving through the yard below, their voices low and rough with sleep. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The lock worked. The bed was soft. And for the first time in 5 years, she went to sleep without wondering what fresh cruelty tomorrow would bring. The men treated her with a careful respect that gradually shifted into something easier. Jack still talked too much, but his stories made the work pass faster. Pete taught her which cuts of beef worked best for stew. Henry showed her how to keep the stove burning steady through the night so the kitchen stayed warm. Even Marcus, stern and silent, nodded his approval when she remembered to make his portions without pork. And Cole kept his distance, but she felt his presence like gravity. He'd appear in the kitchen doorway some mornings, watching her work with an expression she couldn't read. Never interfering, never commenting, just there. She started setting aside coffee for him, the way he liked it, black, strong enough to stand a spoon in. He'd nod his thanks and disappear back into the cold. Sam became her anchor. The old cook stayed on, claiming he was just making sure she didn't burn the place down, but Eliza knew better. He was lonely, missed having someone to teach. So she let him show her his tricks, How to stretch flour when supplies ran low, how to judge meat doneness by touch, how to make gravy that didn't taste like regret. "You're a natural," Sam said one afternoon, watching her knead bread dough with efficient movements. "Got the touch for it." My mother said cooking was just paying attention. Follow the recipe until you know it by heart, then trust your instincts. Smart woman. She was. Eliza shaped the dough into loaves. Died when I was 12. Fever took her in 3 days. "And your father?" 8 years later. Heart gave out while he was mending a fence. She didn't mention how Margaret had immediately sold off everything worth selling, keeping Eliza around only because throwing out your dead husband's daughter looked bad. "Sometimes I think he died of missing her. Just took a while." Sam nodded slowly. "My wife's been gone 15 years. Still reach for her side of the bed some mornings." They worked in comfortable silence after that, the kind that came from shared understanding rather than lack of words. But Red Hollow was a small town, and secrets traveled fast. Eliza first noticed the stares during her 3rd week, when Cole sent her into town with a supply list and money for purchases. She'd tried to refuse. The thought of facing those people again made her stomach clench. But Cole had been insistent. "You work here. You're part of this ranch. And people who work for me don't hide." So she'd gone, shoulders straight, chin up, pretending she didn't notice how conversation stopped when she entered the general store. How Millicent Parker clutched her daughter closer, as if Eliza might contaminate her. How the shopkeeper took her money with the tips of his fingers, like touching her might spread disease. She'd bought what was needed and left without incident, but the encounter sat heavy in her chest all the way back to the ranch. The second time she went to town, Jack insisted on accompanying her. "Boss's orders," he'd said cheerfully, though Eliza suspected it was his own idea. "Besides, I need to pick up some things anyway." His presence made a difference. People were less openly hostile, with a Maddox ranch hand standing next to her. They still whispered, still stared, but they didn't refuse her service. "Don't let them get to you," Jack said on the ride back. "Half of them are just bored. Other half are scared." "Scared of what?" "I'm nobody. You're living on the Maddox ranch, working for Cole. That makes you something in their eyes, just not something they can easily categorize." He grinned. "Small-town folks hate what they can't categorize." "Is that why they fear Cole?" "Part of it. The Maddox brothers don't play by the usual rules. Don't attend church socials, don't marry into the right families, don't bow and scrape to people with money. Makes them dangerous." Eliza thought about that as they rode. The idea of being associated with danger was foreign to her. She'd spent her whole life trying to be small, invisible, safe. Maybe that had been the problem. The 4th week brought the first real trouble. Eliza was in town alone. Cole had needed Jack and Pete for fence work, and she'd assured him she could handle a simple supply run. She was loading flour sacks into the wagon when she heard the voice. Well, if it isn't the charitable case." Constance Fairfax stood on the boardwalk, flanked by 2 other women Eliza vaguely recognized from the Christmas social. All 3 wore expressions of practiced disdain. "Mrs. Fairfax?" Eliza kept her voice neutral, kept loading supplies. "I hear you've found employment. How industrious of you." Constance stepped closer, her perfume expensive and cloying. "Cooking for a bunch of ranch hands. I'm sure your poor father would be so proud." Eliza's hands tightened on the flour sack. "My father taught me the value of honest work." "Honest?" Constance's laugh was sharp. "Is that what we're calling it? Living on a ranch full of men? No chaperone, no family? My dear, there are words for women who make such arrangements." Heat flooded Eliza's face. "I'm a cook, nothing more." "Of course you are." Constance exchanged knowing looks with her companions. "Though one does wonder what else might be expected of you. Payment takes many forms, doesn't it?" The implication landed like a slap. Eliza straightened, meeting Constance's eyes directly. "If you have something to say, say it plainly." "I'm simply concerned for your reputation. What's left of it?" Constance's smile was poison. "Your stepmother was right to cast you out. At least she tried to maintain some standards. My stepmother threw me into the street in December. If those are her standards, I'm glad to be free of them." "Free?" Constance stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're free? You're Cole Maddox's property now. He bought you with a job and a room, and everyone in this town knows what that means. You're his whore, whether you admit it or not." Eliza's vision went white at the edges. Her hand moved before her mind caught up, the flour sack swinging toward Constance's perfectly coiffed head. She stopped herself an inch away. Barely. Constance stumbled backward, her face pale with shock. You tried to strike me. I stopped myself, which is more restraint than you've shown with your tongue. This is assault. I'll have you arrested. For almost hitting you with flour? Tell the sheriff. I'm sure he'll be fascinated. But Constance's eyes had lit with a different kind of excitement, the excitement of someone who'd just been handed a weapon. Oh, I'll do better than the sheriff. The whole town will know what you are, what you've become. She swept away, her companions scurrying after her like ducklings. Eliza finished loading the wagon with shaking hands. She'd been stupid to react, stupid to show that the words had landed. Now Constance would spread her poison, and there was nothing Eliza could do to stop it. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than usual. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising snow. Cole was in the yard when she arrived, working with a young horse. He looked up as the wagon approached, his expression shifting as he took in her face. What happened? Nothing, just town gossip. Eliza. The use of her first name stopped her. He'd been careful to call her Miss Rowan in front of the men, maintaining propriety. This felt different, personal. Constance Fairfax happened, she said finally. She made it clear what she thinks of my working here. Cole's jaw tightened. What did she say? Does it matter? She's going to say it to everyone else anyway. It matters to me. Eliza climbed down from the wagon, suddenly exhausted. She called me your whore, said you'd bought me, that everyone knows what I'm really doing here. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cole's hands clenched on the lead rope, and the young horse skittered nervously. That woman needs to learn when to keep her mouth shut. Don't! Eliza grabbed his arm without thinking. Don't go after her. It'll only make everything worse. She wants a reaction, wants to prove I'm trouble. You're not trouble. She is. I'm trouble by association. I knew that when I accepted your offer. I just didn't think about how it would look to people like her. Cole handed the horse off to Pete, then turned to face her fully. How it looks doesn't matter. How it is matters. You're here because you can cook and needed a job. End of story. That's not how the town sees it. The town can go to hell. Despite everything, Eliza almost smiled. Easy for you to say, you're Cole Maddox. You can afford not to care what people think. And you can't? I never could. She started unloading supplies, needing something to do with her hands. People like me don't get that luxury. We survive by being quiet and invisible, by not making waves. How's that worked out for you? The question was gentle, but it cut deep. Eliza set down a sack of beans and looked at him. Not well. But I don't know how to be any other way. Maybe it's time to learn. Before she could respond, Jack came running from the barn, his face urgent. Cole! Riders coming up the main road. Looks like Sheriff Dockery and a couple of deputies. Cole's expression went carefully blank. How far out? 10 minutes? Maybe less? Get everyone to the bunkhouse. Now. Tell them to stay there until I give the all clear. Jack took off without question. Cole turned to Eliza. Go inside. Don't come out until I tell you. What's happening? I don't know yet, but when the sheriff shows up unannounced with backup, it's never good news. He gripped her shoulders, his touch firm but not painful. Promise me you'll stay inside. Cole, promise me. She nodded, fear rising in her throat like bile. Eliza went to the main house, watching from the parlor window as 3 horses appeared on the horizon. Sheriff Dockery was a large man, his belly straining against his belt, his face red from cold and exertion. The 2 men with him looked younger, harder, their hands resting on their gun belts in a way that was supposed to look casual but didn't. Cole met them in the center of the yard, his stance relaxed but ready. Sam appeared from the kitchen, standing on the porch with his arms crossed. Pete and Henry emerged from the barn, positioning themselves casually but strategically around the yard. The sheriff dismounted with a grunt. Maddox. Sheriff, what brings you out here? Official business. Dockery pulled out a folded paper. Got a complaint filed this morning about a woman living on your property, Eliza Rowan. Eliza's stomach dropped. Constance hadn't wasted time. Miss Rowan is my cook, Cole said evenly. Has been for 3 weeks. What's the complaint? Moral misconduct. Violation of public decency statutes. Dockery's voice held a note of apology, but he didn't put the paper away. Says here she's living in sin, unmarried, on a property with 15 men and no proper chaperone. She has her own locked room in the main house. She's an employee, not a resident for purposes of cohabitation. That's a fine legal distinction, Maddox, but the law is pretty clear. Unmarried woman living on a property owned by an unmarried man without family present constitutes improper arrangement. The law is clear that you can arrest someone for having a job. The law is clear that I can arrest someone when a formal complaint's been filed and there's evidence of impropriety. Dockery shifted his weight uncomfortably. Look, I don't like this any more than you do, but I got 3 sworn statements from respected town ladies saying they witnessed questionable behavior. And Mrs. Rowan, the stepmother, she signed an affidavit saying the girl's of questionable character. Of course she did. Cole's voice was ice. The same stepmother who threw her out in December with nowhere to go. Very reliable source. Cole, I'm just doing my job. Your job is to protect people, not harass them because some bored society women need entertainment. My job is to uphold the law, and the law says I need to bring Miss Rowan in for questioning. If she can prove her employment is legitimate and no impropriety occurred, she'll be released. And if she can't prove a negative? If she can't prove something didn't happen? Dockery's silence was answer enough. Eliza didn't remember deciding to move. One moment she was at the window, the next she was walking out the front door, down the porch steps, into the cold yard. Don't, Cole said sharply as she approached. They'll come in and get me anyway. Eliza looked at the sheriff, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm Eliza Rowan. Dockery's face softened slightly. Miss Rowan, I'm going to need you to come with me to town, just to answer some questions. She's not going anywhere, Cole said. Cole, don't make this harder than it has to be. You want to arrest her? For what? Working? Living in a house with a lock on her door? What law exactly is she breaking? The complaint alleges... I don't care what it alleges. I care what's true. And the truth is, she's done nothing wrong. One of the deputies shifted, his hand moving closer to his gun. Pete and Henry moved too, subtle adjustments that changed the balance of the yard. The air went tight and dangerous. Cole, Eliza said quietly, it's all right. It's not all right. This is persecution dressed up as law. Maybe, but if I don't go, you'll be arrested too, or someone will get hurt. She looked at the men positioned around the yard, saw the tension in their shoulders. I won't have blood spilled over me. Eliza, I'll go answer their questions, prove I'm just a cook, then I'll come back. She said it with more confidence than she felt. Cole's face was a storm. For a moment she thought he'd refuse, thought he'd actually fight the sheriff and his deputies right here in the yard. Then his shoulders dropped an inch. Defeat, but only tactical. I'm coming with her. That's not... She doesn't go anywhere without representation. You want to question her? I'll be there, as her employer and witness to her character. Dockery sighed. Fine, but no trouble, Maddox. I mean it. No promises. They saddled 2 horses. Eliza had never been a strong rider, but she managed to mount without embarrassing herself. Cole swung up beside her, his face grim. As they rode out, Eliza glanced back at the ranch. Sam stood on the porch, Jack and Pete in the yard, all of them watching with expressions of impotent anger. 3 weeks. She'd had 3 weeks of peace. Should have known it wouldn't last. The ride to town took an hour. No one spoke. The sheriff and his deputies led, Cole and Eliza followed, the whole procession like a funeral march. Red Hollow's main street was busy for late afternoon. People stopped to stare as they passed, word spreading like wildfire. By the time they reached the sheriff's office, a small crowd had gathered. Eliza saw Margaret in the crowd, her face twisted with satisfaction. Saw Constance and her friends, whispering behind gloved hands. Saw Thomas Pritchard and other town elders, their expressions stern and judgmental. The trial had already happened, she realized. In their minds, she was already guilty. Inside the sheriff's office, Dockery gestured to a chair. Sit down, Miss Rowan. Eliza sat. Cole remained standing behind her, a silent wall of support. Dockery shuffled papers, clearly uncomfortable. This is just a preliminary questioning. You're not under arrest yet. Yet, Cole repeated flatly. I have to follow procedure. Dockery looked at Eliza. Miss Rowan, can you describe your living arrangements at the Maddox Ranch? I have a private room in the main house. I cook 3 meals a day for the ranch hands. I'm paid $30 a month plus room and board. And your relationship with Mr. Maddox? He's my employer. Nothing more? Nothing more. Dockery made notes. The complaint alleges that you're living in an improper arrangement, that as an unmarried woman sharing a residence with an unmarried man, you're in violation of public morality standards. I'm not sharing a residence. I'm an employee living in employee housing. The distinction isn't clear under the law. Then the law is stupid, Cole said. Regardless, I have to enforce it. Dockery set down his pen. Miss Rowan, I'm going to have to hold you overnight while the judge reviews the complaint. If he finds merit, there'll be a hearing. If not, you'll be released. A hearing? Eliza's voice cracked. Like a trial? More informal, but yes, essentially. For having a job. For the appearance of impropriety. I know it seems like persecution, Cole interrupted, because that's what it is. The door burst open. Constance Fairfax swept in, followed by Millicent Parker and 2 other women. Behind them came Margaret, her face alight with vindication. Sheriff Dockery, Constance said breathlessly, thank heavens you've brought her in. This woman has been a stain on our town's reputation for weeks. Mrs. Fairfax, this is official business. We're witnesses. We've seen her parading around town. No shame, no decency. Living in sin with that man and acting like it's respectable employment. I am respectably employed, Eliza said, her voice shaking with anger now, instead of fear. I cook, that's all? That's what you claim, Margaret said, stepping forward. But we all know what really happens on that ranch. A young woman, alone with all those men, no supervision. She has supervision, Cole said coldly. Mine. Oh yes, the great Cole Maddox, defender of fallen women. How noble. Constance's smile was vicious. Or how convenient. Tell me, Mr. Maddox, do all your employees share your bed, or is Miss Rowan special? Cole moved so fast Eliza barely saw it. One moment he was behind her chair, the next he was inches from Constance, his presence filling the room like a physical force. Say that again, he said quietly. Constance paled but held her ground. You can't intimidate me. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to give you a chance to retract a slanderous lie before I pursue legal action for defamation. It's not slander if it's true. It's not true! Eliza was on her feet now, all her careful composure shattered. I cook, I clean, I do my job. That's all. And if you're so concerned with morality, maybe you should look at your own behavior. Spreading lies about people, destroying reputations, treating human beings like entertainment? How dare you, Margaret hissed. You ungrateful little wretch. I gave you a home. You gave me hell. The words exploded out of Eliza like they'd been building for years. You made my life miserable from the moment you married my father. And when he died, you used me like a servant, took everything that was his, everything that should have been mine, and then threw me out in the cold when I stopped being useful. I had every right. You had the legal right. That doesn't make it decent. That doesn't make it human. Eliza was shaking now, years of suppressed rage pouring out. And now you're here, trying to destroy the one good thing I've found because you can't stand the idea that I might be happy, that I might have value. The room had gone silent. Margaret's face was purple with fury. You see, Sheriff? You see how she speaks to me? This is exactly the kind of moral corruption I warned you about. What I see, Dockery said slowly, is a young woman defending herself against some serious accusations. What I don't see is any actual evidence of wrongdoing. The evidence is her presence on that ranch, Constance snapped. Having a job isn't evidence of immorality. Living unmarried with a man is. She's not living with him. She's working for him. It's the same thing. It's not, Cole said. And if this town can't tell the difference, that says more about the town than it does about Miss Rowan. The door opened again. This time it was Judge Thornton, looking irritated at being pulled from his dinner. Someone want to tell me what's so urgent it couldn't wait until morning? Everyone started talking at once. The judge held up a hand. One at a time. Sheriff, Dockery explained this complaint. The judge listened, his expression growing more skeptical by the minute. Let me get this straight. You want to prosecute a woman for being employed? For living in moral misconduct. Based on what evidence? Has anyone witnessed actual impropriety? Any physical evidence of inappropriate relations? Silence. So what we have is a woman with a job, living in employee housing, being accused of immorality because some people don't like the arrangement. Judge Thornton shook his head. This is the biggest waste of my time I've seen all year. Your Honor, Constance protested, the very situation is improper. The very situation is employment. Miss Rowan, do you have a private room with a lock? Yes, sir. Are you paid fairly for your work? Yes, sir. Has anyone on the Maddox Ranch behaved inappropriately toward you? No, sir. Everyone's been respectful. Then I see no cause for prosecution. Case dismissed. But Your Honor, dismissed. Sheriff Dockery, release Miss Rowan. Everyone else, go home. And Mrs. Fairfax, next time you file a frivolous complaint that wastes the court's time, I'll fine you for it. Constance's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But Margaret wasn't done. This isn't over. I'll take this to the territorial governor if I have to. That girl is a stain on this community. That girl, the judge said sharply, is a citizen with the same rights as anyone else in this town, including the right to work without harassment. Now get out of my sight before I charge you with disturbing the peace. The women filed out, their faces twisted with frustration. Margaret shot Eliza one last look of pure hatred before she left. When they were gone, Judge Thornton turned to Eliza. You all right, miss? I think so. Good. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you had to deal with this nonsense. He looked at Cole. Maddox, might I suggest you consider making this arrangement more official? Would save everyone a lot of trouble. What do you mean? Marriage. Makes her family instead of an employee. Shuts down this line of attack permanently. The room went very quiet. That's not, Eliza started, just a suggestion. The judge tipped his hat. Good evening. He left. Dockery began gathering papers, studiously avoiding eye contact. Cole and Eliza stood in the middle of the room, the judge's words hanging between them like smoke. We should go, Cole said finally. They walked to their horses in silence. The street had emptied, people retreating to their homes now that the show was over. They were halfway back to the ranch when Cole spoke. He's right, you know. Eliza's heart jumped. About what? They'll keep coming after you. Different complaints, same goal. Drive you out, punish you for not knowing your place. Cole stared straight ahead. Unless we give them a reason they can't argue with. Marriage. Marriage. That's insane. Is it? You need protection from people like your stepmother. I need a cook who won't quit. Seems practical. Practical. Eliza couldn't believe they were having this conversation. You want to marry me for practicality? I want to marry you because it solves a problem, because it keeps you safe, because... He paused. Because in 3 weeks you've made that ranch more of a home than it's been in 5 years. That's not a reason to get married. It's as good a reason as any. Cole, think about it. He finally looked at her. We don't have to decide tonight, but unless you want to fight this battle over and over, we're going to need a permanent solution. They rode the rest of the way in silence, both lost in thought. But Eliza knew deep down that he was right. The town would never accept her as simply an employee. They'd keep pushing, keep attacking, until she either left or broke, unless she became untouchable, unless she became a Maddox. The question was whether she was brave enough to take that step, and what it would cost them both if she did. Eliza barely slept that night. She lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling while Cole's words circled her mind like vultures. Marriage. A practical solution to an impossible problem. Protection wrapped in legality. Safety disguised as commitment. It should have felt wrong. Should have felt like surrender or desperation or any number of things her mother would have warned her against. Instead, it just felt inevitable. She rose before dawn, as always, and went to the kitchen. The familiar routine steadied her, lighting the stove, measuring coffee, starting biscuits. Her hands knew the work even when her mind was elsewhere. Sam appeared as the first light crept through the windows. He took one look at her face and poured 2 cups of coffee. Heard what happened in town yesterday. Of course you did. Eliza kneaded dough with more force than necessary. I'm sure everyone's heard by now. Jack came back spittin' mad, said the sheriff had no business hauling you in like a criminal. Sam sipped his coffee. Also said Judge Thornton suggested a rather interesting solution. Eliza's hands stilled. How much did Jack hear? Enough. Boy's got ears like a bat. Sam studied her. You thinking about it? I don't know what I'm thinking about. It's insane. Is it? I've seen crazier marriages. Hell, I've been in crazier marriages. Despite everything, Eliza smiled. How many times were you married? Twice. The first one was for love, lasted 43 years until she died. Second one was for companionship, lasted 6 months until we both admitted we'd made a mistake. He set down his cup. Point is, marriages happen for all kinds of reasons. Love's nice when you can get it, but it's not the only foundation worth building on. What else is there? Respect, trust, shared purpose. Sam grabbed a bowl and started cracking eggs. You respect Cole? Yes. Trust him? Eliza thought about Cole standing between her and the entire town, about the way he'd defended her without asking for anything in return, about 3 weeks of being treated like a human being instead of a burden. Yes, she said quietly. And you got a shared purpose? Both trying to make the ranch work, both trying to survive in a town that doesn't want you. I suppose. Then seems to me you've got as good a foundation as most. Better than some. Sam cracked another egg. Question isn't whether it makes sense. Question is whether you're brave enough to do it. Eliza returned to her dough, shaping it with automatic precision. What if it's a mistake? What if I'm just running from one bad situation into another? Could be. Life's full of mistakes. Sam started whisking eggs. But this one comes with a locked door, steady pay, and a man who's already proven he'll fight for you. That's more than most women get. That's a depressing standard. It's a realistic one. The kitchen door opened and Cole entered, looking like he'd slept as poorly as she had. His eyes went to Eliza first, a question in them she wasn't ready to answer. Coffee's fresh, Sam said, sliding a cup across the counter. Thanks. Cole wrapped both hands around the mug, his knuckles still scraped from yesterday's confrontation. Eliza, can we talk? I'm in the middle of... I'll handle breakfast, Sam interrupted. Go on. Eliza wiped her hands on her apron and followed Cole outside. The yard was quiet, the sun just starting to paint the horizon pink. Their breath formed clouds in the cold air. Cole led her to the fence line overlooking the south pasture. Cattle dotted the landscape, dark shapes against white snow. I shouldn't have brought it up like that, he said finally. On the ride back. Bad timing. When would have been good timing? Fair point. He leaned against the fence. I've been thinking about it all night, about whether I had any right to even suggest it, about what it would mean for both of us. And I still think it's the best option. Not because I want to trap you or because I have some agenda, but because it's the only move that protects you completely. Eliza looked out at the cattle. What about you? What do you get out of it? A cook I can rely on. Someone who won't abandon the ranch when things get hard. He paused. Someone who makes the place feel less empty. That's not enough reason to marry someone. Maybe not, but it's honest. He turned to face her. I'm not going to stand here and claim I'm in love with you. We barely know each other. But I respect you. I trust you. And I think, given time, we could build something real. Or we could make each other miserable. We could. That's the risk. Cole's expression was serious. But here's what I know for certain. If you don't marry me, Margaret and Constance and everyone like them will keep coming after you. Different charges, different accusations, same goal. They want you broken and gone, and eventually they'll succeed. Eliza hated that he was right. Hated that her choices had narrowed to this. Marry a man she barely knew or spend the rest of her life fighting battles she couldn't win. What would the marriage look like? She asked. Practically speaking. Cole seemed to relax slightly, like her question meant hope. However you want it to look. We'd share a name and a house, but your room would still be yours. No expectations beyond what you're comfortable with. You'd still cook for the ranch, still get paid. The only difference would be legal protection. A marriage in name only. At first, maybe always, if that's what you prefer. Or maybe... He trailed off, leaving the possibility hanging. Maybe what? Maybe it becomes something more. In time. If we both want it to. He met her eyes. I'm not a romantic man, Eliza. I can't promise you passion or grand gestures, but I can promise you respect, safety, and a home. for as long as you want them. The sun had fully risen now, turning the snow to gold. Somewhere in the barn, Jack was singing off-key while mucking stalls. Normal morning sounds of a working ranch. A home, Cole had said. Not a house, not shelter, but a home. If I say yes, Eliza said slowly, we do this properly. Not some quiet ceremony where we sneak around like we're ashamed. If we're going to get married, we do it in front of the whole town. Make them look us in the eye and acknowledge it. A slow smile spread across Cole's face. You want to make a statement. I want to make them choke on their words. Every accusation, every lie, every cruel thing they said about me, I want to stand in front of them as Mrs. Maddox and dare them to say it again. That's going to make you a target. I'm already a target. At least this way I'll have armor. Cole extended his hand. Then we have an agreement? Eliza looked at his outstretched hand, calloused, strong, offering her something she'd never had before. A choice that was actually a choice, not just picking the least terrible option. She took his hand. We have an agreement. His grip was firm and warm. They shook once, sealing the deal like a business arrangement, which is exactly what it was. Except Eliza couldn't quite shake the feeling that they'd just set something in motion that would change both their lives in ways neither of them could predict. I'll ride into town this morning, Cole said. Talk to Reverend Matthews about a ceremony. How soon do you want to do this? As soon as possible, before I lose my nerve or before Constance files another complaint. Saturday, then. Gives us 3 days to prepare. 3 days. Eliza's stomach flipped. That's fast. You want to wait longer? No. No, you're right. Fast is better. They walked back to the kitchen together. Sam took one look at their faces and grinned. I'll be damned. You're actually doing it. Apparently so, Eliza said. Well then, congratulations. Sam clapped Cole on the shoulder. You're getting a hell of a cook. Try not to mess it up. I'll do my best. The men filtered in for breakfast over the next hour. Word spread fast. Ranch gossip traveled at the speed of light. By the time Jack arrived, already grinning like a fool, everyone knew. Boss, is it true? Jack asked. You and Miss Rowan? Saturday, Cole confirmed, and anyone who has a problem with it can find work elsewhere. Problem? This is the best news we've had in months, Jack turned to Eliza. Congratulations, miss. Soon to be Mrs. Maddox. The title sent a strange thrill through her. Mrs. Maddox. Not the unwanted stepdaughter, not the hired cook, but someone with standing and name and protection. Thank you, Jack. Pete raised his coffee cup. To the happy couple, may your marriage be long and your biscuits always rise. Laughter filled the kitchen. Real laughter, the kind that came from genuine happiness instead of mockery. Eliza felt something in her chest loosen, a tension she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. After breakfast, Cole saddled his horse for the ride to town. Eliza watched from the kitchen window, anxiety gnawing at her. He'll be fine, Sam said. Cole can handle Reverend Matthews. It's not the Reverend I'm worried about. It's everyone else. Let them talk. By Saturday, they'll have to swallow every word. But Eliza knew it wouldn't be that simple. The town had drawn its battle lines, and marriage wouldn't make her suddenly acceptable in their eyes. If anything, it might make the hatred worse. Cole returned 3 hours later, his expression grim. Well? Eliza met him in the yard. Reverend Matthews agreed to perform the ceremony. Saturday at 2 o'clock at the church. Cole dismounted, handing the reins to Pete. He wasn't happy about it, but he agreed. What did he say? That it was highly irregular, that I should reconsider, that the town would talk. Cole's jaw tightened. I told him the town was already talking, and this would at least give them something true to discuss. How did he take that? About as well as you'd expect, but he'll do it. I made a generous donation to the church roof fund to help him see reason. Despite her nerves, Eliza almost laughed. You bribed a reverend? I made a charitable contribution, completely different. Cole's expression softened. He also said we'd need witnesses. I'm bringing Sam and the ranch hands. You have anyone you want to invite? The question landed like a stone. Eliza had no one, no family who'd stand for her, no friends who'd risk their reputation to attend. She'd be walking into that church with nothing but the people Cole provided. No, she said quietly. There's no one. Cole's hand found hers, squeezing once. Then we'll be enough. That evening, Eliza stood in front of the small mirror in her room, trying to figure out what one wore to a marriage of convenience. Her two dresses were both worn and outdated. Neither seemed appropriate for becoming Mrs. Cole Maddox. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Sam entered, carrying a wrapped package. This belonged to Cole's grandmother. He thought you might want to wear it on Saturday. Eliza unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a dress, simple but beautifully made, in a deep blue fabric that had survived the years with grace. It was old-fashioned but not outdated, practical but elegant. "It's beautiful," she whispered. She wore it to her own wedding. Cole's grandfather said she looked like the sky just before dawn. Sam smiled. "Seems fitting, doesn't it? New beginning and all that." Eliza held the dress up to herself. It would fit, maybe with minor adjustments. "Why would Cole give me this?" "Because you're about to become family, and in this family, we take care of our own." After Sam left, Eliza carefully hung the dress and sat on her bed, the weight of what was about to happen finally settling on her shoulders. In 3 days, she'd walk into that church as Eliza Rowan, nobody, unwanted, alone. She'd walk out as Eliza Maddox, protected, respected, part of something larger than herself. The transformation should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt terrifying. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Eliza cooked for the ranch while Sam helped her alter the blue dress. The men went about their work with an energy she hadn't seen before, like the approaching wedding had given them something to celebrate in the middle of a hard winter. Cole was mostly absent, dealing with ranch business, and Eliza suspected making sure certain people in town knew exactly what was about to happen. She caught glimpses of him, riding out before dawn, returning after dark, always with that set expression that meant he was planning something. Friday evening, he found her in the kitchen after the dinner cleanup. "Can I show you something?" Eliza dried her hands and followed him to the main house. He led her upstairs to a door she'd never opened. His room, she realized. "I had the men move some furniture around," he said, opening the door. The room had been divided. A partition wall now split the space in two, creating 2 separate bedrooms where there had been one. Each side had its own door, its own lock. "Your room downstairs is too small," Cole said. "And I thought, if we're going to be married, you should have proper space. This side is yours, completely private. I won't enter without permission." Eliza walked into what was now her room. It was 3 times the size of her current space, with a real bed, a wardrobe, a window seat overlooking the south pasture. Someone had even added curtains, simple but clean. "Cole, this is too much." "It's what you deserve. What any wife deserves." He leaned against the doorframe. "I meant what I said about this being your choice. This room, this marriage, all of it. You set the boundaries and I'll respect them." Eliza turned to face him, this man who kept surprising her with small acts of decency. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because kindness doesn't cost me anything, and because you've had precious little of it in your life." He straightened. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He left, closing the door behind him. Eliza stood alone in her new room, feeling the walls of her old life finally, completely crumbling away. Saturday arrived cold and bright. Eliza woke in her small room for the last time, knowing that tonight she'd sleep in the space Cole had prepared for her. The blue dress hung ready. The mirror reflected a woman who looked steadier than she felt. Sam helped her with her hair, pinning it up in a style her mother had once favored. The dress fit perfectly after their alterations. Looking at herself, Eliza barely recognized the woman staring back. "You look beautiful," Sam said quietly. "I look terrified." "That too, but mostly beautiful." The ranch hands were already dressed in their best clothes when she came downstairs. Jack whistled, then immediately looked embarrassed. Pete smiled and offered his arm. "We'll all ride in together," Cole said, appearing in a suit that actually fit him this time. "Show them we're unified." They made quite a procession, Cole and Eliza in the lead wagon, followed by every ranch hand who could be spared from work. 15 people riding into town like an army going to battle. Because that's what this was, Eliza realized. Not a wedding, but a declaration of war. They were forcing the town to acknowledge what it had tried to deny, that she had value, that she deserved respect, that she wouldn't be broken by their cruelty. Red Hollow's streets were unusually full for a Saturday afternoon. Word had spread, of course. The entire town had turned out to witness the spectacle. Eliza kept her chin up as they rode past. She saw Margaret in the crowd, her face purple with rage. Saw Constance and her friends, whispering furiously. Saw Thomas Pritchard and the other town elders, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Let them look. Let them see what they'd created with their cruelty. The church was packed, every pew filled with people who'd come not to celebrate but to judge. Reverend Matthews stood at the altar, his face carefully neutral. Cole helped Eliza down from the wagon. She took his arm, and together they walked through a gauntlet of hostile stares. Halfway down the aisle, someone spat. The sound was distinct in the silence. Cole stopped. The entire church held its breath. Anyone else? His voice carried to the rafters. Because if you've got something to say, now's the time. After this ceremony, Eliza will be my wife, and anyone who disrespects my wife answers to me. No one spoke, but the hatred in the room was thick enough to choke on. They continued forward. Sam and Jack took their places as witnesses. Reverend Matthews opened his Bible with shaking hands. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice uncertain. The ceremony was brief, stripped of warmth or celebration. Reverend Matthews recited the words like a man performing an unpleasant duty. When he asked if anyone objected, Margaret actually stood. "I object. This is a mockery." "On what grounds?" Cole's voice cut through her protest. "On the grounds that she's unworthy, that this marriage is a sham designed to circumvent the law." "Judge Thornton already ruled on this matter," Cole said calmly. "Unless you have new evidence, sit down." Margaret's mouth worked soundlessly. After a moment, she sat, her face twisted with impotent fury. Reverend Matthews cleared his throat. "If there are no legal objections, we'll continue." He rushed through the rest, clearly eager to be done. When he reached the vows, his voice barely above a whisper, Cole spoke his promises clearly and firmly, each word a challenge to everyone listening. Then it was Eliza's turn. She looked at Cole, this hard, complicated man who'd shown her more kindness in a month than she'd received in 5 years, who'd offered her protection and asked for nothing but honesty in return. "I, Eliza Rowan, take you, Cole Maddox, to be my husband." Her voice rang clear in the silent church. "I promise to respect you, to stand beside you, and to honor the home we build together. Not the traditional vows, but true ones. By the power vested in me," Reverend Matthews said quickly, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." He didn't say kiss the bride, probably afraid of what the town would do if he suggested such intimacy. But Cole leaned down anyway, pressing a brief, chaste kiss to Eliza's lips, a formality that somehow felt like the most honest moment of the entire ceremony. "Mrs. Maddox," he said quietly, just for her. "Mr. Maddox," she replied, and felt a smile tug at her lips despite everything. They turned to face the congregation. The hostility was still there, but underneath it now was something else. Uncertainty. The realization that their attempt to destroy her had failed. Cole led her down the aisle with his head high. Eliza matched his stride, refusing to cower or hurry. Every person who'd mocked her, every person who'd called her worthless, had to look at her now as she walked past. Mrs. Cole Maddox, untouchable. Outside, the ranch hands had formed a protective circle around the wagon. As Cole helped Eliza up, Jack let out a whoop that echoed down Main Street. "To the new Mrs. Maddox!" The other hands joined in, their celebration deliberate and loud, making sure everyone in town heard. As they pulled away, Eliza looked back one last time. Margaret stood on the church steps, her face a mask of hatred and defeat. Beside her, Constance looked equally furious. They'd wanted to see her broken, wanted to drive her away, erase her, prove she was nothing. Instead, they'd made her a Maddox. The ride back to the ranch was jubilant. Jack produced a harmonica and started playing. Pete and Henry sang off-key. Even Sam was smiling. Cole sat beside Eliza, his hand finding hers on the seat between them. "You all right?" he asked quietly. "I just married a man I barely know in front of a town that hates me. I'm either completely all right or completely insane." "Could be both." "Could be." He squeezed her hand. "Thank you for going through with it, for being brave enough to stand there and take their worst." "I didn't do it for them. I did it for me." Eliza looked at him. "And maybe a little bit for you." "Good." Because I did it for you. Entirely for you. The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. This was supposed to be practical. A business arrangement. A marriage of convenience. But sitting in the wagon with her hand in his while his men celebrated around them, it felt like something more. Something that might actually have a chance of becoming real. Back at the ranch, Sam had prepared a feast. The men ate and drank and toasted the newlyweds until the moon rose high and clear. Finally, as the celebration wound down, Cole stood and offered Eliza his hand. "Shall we?" She took it, letting him lead her to the main house, to the upstairs room with the partition wall where two separate spaces waited. At her door, Cole paused. "This is your room. Your space. I meant what I said about boundaries." "I know." Eliza looked up at him. "Cole? Thank you for all of it. You're my wife now. Protecting you isn't charity. It's what I'm supposed to do." "Still, thank you." He nodded, looking like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that felt courtly and strange and somehow perfect. "Good night, Eliza." "Good night, Cole." She entered her room and locked the door, then stood in the darkness, listening to him move around on the other side of the wall. Mrs. Maddox. The name felt foreign and familiar at once, like trying on shoes that weren't quite broken in yet but might fit perfectly given time. Outside, she could hear the men settling down for the night, the ranch creaking and breathing around her, the wind whistling across the empty plains. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, Eliza Maddox, felt safe. Not happy yet. Not quite. But safe. And that was enough to build on. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Marriage certificates didn't erase years of damage, and a ring on her finger didn't automatically make Eliza feel like she belonged. But it did give her breathing room, and breathing room was something she'd never had before. The first week passed in strange domesticity. Eliza still woke before dawn, still cooked 3 meals a day, still cleaned the kitchen until it shone. But now when she moved through the main house, it was hers to move through. When the men called her Mrs. Maddox, it wasn't mockery. It was fact. Cole kept his word about boundaries. They lived on opposite sides of a partition wall, sharing space but maintaining separation. He never entered her room without knocking, never presumed intimacy they hadn't agreed to. At meals, he sat at the head of the table like always, but now Eliza sat at the other end, and the men looked to both of them for guidance. It was strange and new and occasionally awkward, but it worked. The second week brought the first test. Eliza was in town for supplies, always with Jack or Pete now, Cole's insurance against trouble, when she saw Margaret across the street. Her stepmother stood with Constance and 2 other women, their heads bent together in obvious conspiracy. When Margaret looked up and saw Eliza, something ugly flickered across her face. She crossed the street with purpose, her companions trailing behind like wolves following a pack leader. "Well, if it isn't the new Mrs. Maddox," Margaret's voice dripped venom. "How proud you must be, trapping a man into marriage to save your reputation." Jack stiffened beside Eliza, but she put a hand on his arm. This was hers to handle. "I didn't trap anyone, Margaret. Cole proposed and I accepted, same as thousands of people do every day." "Oh, please, everyone knows it was a business arrangement, a transaction." Margaret stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But here's what I know that you don't. Cole Maddox has been trying to buy the water rights to your father's old property for 3 years, the land I own now. And suddenly he's married to you, and everyone will expect me to be charitable to family." The implication landed like a punch, that Cole had married her to get to the land, not to protect her, that she'd been a pawn in a larger game. Eliza felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she kept her face neutral. "Is that all?" "That's not all. I want you to know that I'll never sell to him. Never. No matter how this charade plays out. And when he realizes you're useless to him, when he gets tired of pretending you're worth something, where will you be then?" "I'll be his wife, legally and publicly, which is more security than you ever gave me." Margaret's face twisted. "You ungrateful." "No." Eliza cut her off, her voice sharp enough to draw attention from passers-by. "I'm not ungrateful. I'm free. Free of you, free of your house, free of spending every day wondering what new cruelty you'd invent. And if that makes me ungrateful, then I'm fine with it." She turned to Jack. "We're done here. Let's go." They loaded the supplies in tense silence. Jack kept shooting her worried glances, but had the sense not to pry. It wasn't until they were halfway back to the ranch that he finally spoke. Is it true? About the water rights? I don't know. Eliza stared at the road ahead. I didn't know my father owned anything worth buying. It's good land, spring-fed creek that runs year-round. Cole's been trying to expand the south pasture, but without water access, it's useless. Jack shifted uncomfortably. But I don't think... the boss wouldn't marry you just for that. Would he? I don't know what Cole would or wouldn't do. I barely know him. The words tasted bitter, because Margaret's accusation had found the soft, unprotected place in Eliza's chest, the part that still expected cruelty, still waited for the other shoe to drop, still couldn't quite believe that anyone would help her without wanting something in return. Cole was in the barn when they returned. Eliza watched him work with a difficult horse, his movements patient and sure, and tried to reconcile the man she'd been living with for 2 weeks with someone calculating enough to marry for land access. She couldn't do it, couldn't make the pieces fit. That evening, after the men had eaten and dispersed, Eliza found Cole in his office, a small room off the main hall where he kept ledgers and correspondence. Can we talk? He looked up from a stack of papers, immediately reading something in her expression. What's wrong? Margaret approached me in town today. She said some things. What kind of things? Eliza closed the door and sat in the chair across from his desk. She said you've been trying to buy water rights to my father's property for 3 years, that you married me to get access to the land. Cole's face went very still. Then he set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. Did she? Is it true? About the water rights? Yes. The single word hit harder than she'd expected. Eliza felt something inside her start to crack. But that's not why I married you, Cole continued. And if you think about it for more than a minute, you'll realize that marriage gives me exactly 0 access to land Margaret owns. You're not her heir. You have no legal claim to your father's property. So marrying you did nothing to advance that particular goal. Eliza blinked. He was right. She wasn't entitled to anything Margaret owned. Then why bring it up? Because she's trying to poison you against me, trying to make you doubt, make you question, make you think you're being used. Cole's voice was calm, but his eyes were angry. It's what she does. She finds the weak spots and presses until something breaks. How do you know that? Because I've watched her do it to you for 5 years. Every time you came to town, every time I saw you at the general store or the post office, you looked smaller, more defeated, like you were disappearing piece by piece. He stood, moving to the window. That's why I defended you at the Christmas social. Not because of cookies, but because I was tired of watching someone slowly destroy another human being, and everyone else just standing around letting it happen. Eliza's throat tightened. You noticed me? Before the party? Of course I noticed you. You were the quiet woman with sad eyes who never bought anything nice for herself, who always looked like she was bracing for a blow. He turned to face her. And yeah, I wanted the water rights, still do, but I'll find another way to get water to that pasture. I won't use you to do it. The crack in Eliza's chest started to seal. Not completely, trust took time, and she'd learned too many hard lessons to give it freely, but enough. Margaret said she'd never sell to you anyway. I know, she told me the same thing 2 years ago. Cole returned to his desk. That's why I stopped asking. Some battles aren't worth fighting. But the land is valuable. Lots of things are valuable. Doesn't mean they're worth compromising my integrity to get. He picked up his pen again. Is that all she said? She also said, when you get tired of me, I'll have nothing. She's wrong about that too. You're my wife. What's mine is yours. If I died tomorrow, the ranch goes to you. And if you ever wanted to leave, I'd make sure you had enough money to start over somewhere safe. He met her eyes. You're not trapped here, Eliza. This is a choice you can unmake if you want to. I don't want to unmake it. Good. Because I don't either. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Eliza stood to leave. Cole? Thank you for being honest. That's what this is built on. Honesty and respect. We lose those. We don't have anything. She left feeling steadier than she'd arrived, but Margaret's words still echoed. Because even if Cole was telling the truth, and Eliza believed he was, the town would always whisper, always speculate, always look for ways to diminish what she'd built. The third week brought snow. Heavy, relentless snow that buried the ranch in white and made travel nearly impossible. They were cut off from town, isolated in a world of cold and wind, and the constant work of keeping animals alive. It was during this forced proximity that Eliza started to see Cole clearly. She noticed how he always served himself last at meals, making sure the men had enough first, how he'd work 18-hour days and never complain, how he knew every animal on the ranch by sight, every man by temperament, and adjusted his approach accordingly. She noticed the small kindnesses, how he'd bring in extra firewood so she wouldn't have to make trips in the cold, how he'd fix things in the kitchen before she even mentioned they were broken, how he'd leave books outside her door that he thought she might like. And she noticed the loneliness, the way he'd stand at the window sometimes, staring out at nothing, his expression distant and sad. The way he never talked about his parents, his past, the scars that had made him into someone who valued honesty above all else. One evening, when the men had gone to bed and the kitchen was clean, Eliza found him in the parlor, reading by lamplight. "Can I join you?" He looked up, surprised. They usually retired to their separate rooms after cleanup. Of course. She sat in the chair across from his, bringing her mending. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, him reading, her stitching up a torn shirt. "Sam told me your grandmother designed the kitchen," Eliza said eventually. "She did. Said if she was going to spend half her life in there, it should at least be pleasant to work in. She sounds like she was formidable. She was. Ran this ranch better than my grandfather ever did. When he died, people expected her to sell and move to town. She told them to mind their own business and kept right on working." Cole smiled at the memory. She didn't suffer fools or cruelty or people who thought being born to money made them better than people who worked for it. "Is that why you hate the town so much?" "I don't hate the town. I hate what it represents. Judgment without understanding, cruelty without consequence, people who tear others down to feel superior." He set down his book. "My grandmother used to say that character is what you do when no one's watching, and I've watched this town long enough to know most people here have none." "Not everyone's like Margaret and Constance." "No, but enough of them are, or they're willing to stand by and let it happen, which is almost worse." Eliza thought about that as she stitched, about how many people had watched Margaret mistreat her over the years and done nothing, how many had seen her humiliation at the Christmas social and laughed along. "Why do you stay then? If you hate it so much, why not sell the ranch and go somewhere else?" "Because this land was my grandmother's. Because my brothers and I built something here that matters. And because running away doesn't solve anything, it just moves the problem. Sometimes running is the only option. Sometimes, but not this time." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I'm not running from Red Hollow, and neither are you. We're going to stay right here and build a life so solid they can't touch it. Even if they never accept us? Especially if they never accept us. Their acceptance means nothing. Ours means everything." The conviction in his voice stirred something in Eliza, a spark of the anger she'd felt at the sheriff's office, the defiance she'd shown at the wedding, the part of her that was tired of being small and quiet and afraid. "You're right," she said. "We stay. We build. We show them exactly what they threw away when they decided I wasn't worth their kindness." Cole's smile was fierce and approving. "Now you're thinking like a Maddox." The fourth week brought a visitor. Eliza was making bread when she heard horses in the yard. She looked out to see a woman dismounting, young, well-dressed, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to doubt your place in the world. Cole came out to greet her, and Eliza watched them talk. The woman laughed at something he said, touched his arm casually. Comfortable. Familiar. Jealousy flared hot and unexpected in Eliza's chest, which was ridiculous. She and Cole had an arrangement, not a romance. What he did with other women was none of her business, except they were married. And even marriages of convenience had expectations about fidelity. Sam came into the kitchen, following her gaze. "That's Rachel Winters, Cole's childhood friend. Her family owns the ranch to the east." "Friend. Just a friend, though her mother's been hoping for more for years." Sam started pulling out ingredients for pie crust. "Rachel comes by every few months to check on Cole, make sure he's not working himself to death." "That's very thoughtful of her." Sam gave her a look. "You're allowed to be jealous, you know. You're his wife." "We're not. It's not like that." "Maybe not yet, but it could be if you both stopped being so careful with each other." Before Eliza could respond, the kitchen door opened and Cole entered with Rachel. "Eliza, this is Rachel Winters. Rachel, my wife, Eliza." "Your wife?" Rachel's eyes went wide. Cole, you got married and didn't tell me? I'm hurt. It was a quick decision, and recent. Rachel turned to Eliza, her smile warm and genuine. Well, congratulations. I've been telling Cole for years he needs someone to keep him human. Maybe you'll succeed where the rest of us failed. Eliza liked her immediately, which made the jealousy worse. They sat in the kitchen drinking coffee while Rachel caught Cole up on news from her ranch. She was funny and sharp, telling stories that made even Sam laugh. And she treated Eliza with an easy acceptance that felt sincere. So how did you two meet? Rachel asked eventually. Christmas social, Cole said. Eliza made the best cookies I'd ever tasted, and the town tried to crucify her for it. That sounds about right. Red Hollow does love its crucifixions. Rachel shook her head. I'm glad you found someone, Cole. You've been alone too long. I'm fine alone. You're functional alone. That's different. Rachel stood to leave. Anyway, I should get back before the weather turns. But Eliza, I hope you'll come visit sometime. It'd be nice to have another woman around who doesn't spend all day gossiping about whose daughter is courting whom. I'd like that, Eliza said, and meant it. After Rachel left, Eliza and Cole cleaned up in silence. She could feel him watching her, waiting for something. She's nice, Eliza said finally. She is. Have you ever, were you two? No, never. Rachel's like a sister. Always has been. Cole dried a cup, his movements careful. Besides, she's courting a banker from Denver, getting married in the spring. Oh, were you jealous? The directness of the question caught her off guard. That's none of your business. You're my wife. It's definitely my business. We have an arrangement. What you do with other women? I'm not doing anything with other women. Cole set down the cup. Eliza, look at me. She did, reluctantly. This marriage might have started as a practical solution, but I take it seriously. That means fidelity. That means no other women. That means you're the only person I'm building a life with. His eyes searched hers. And if you were jealous, that's actually good news. It means you care. Eliza fumbled for words. I don't know what I feel. That's fair. We're still figuring this out. He stepped closer, his voice softening. But for what it's worth, I like having you here. I like coming into the kitchen and seeing you cooking. I like hearing you laugh at Jack's stupid jokes. I like that the house feels like a home again, instead of just a place I sleep. Eliza's heart did something complicated in her chest. Cole, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He grabbed his coat. I need to check on the cattle. I'll be back for dinner. He left, and Eliza stood alone in the kitchen, her hands shaking slightly as she returned to her bread. What she felt was too complex to name, gratitude and affection and something deeper that scared her, because caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant someone could hurt you. But maybe, a small voice whispered, not everyone would. The 5th week brought spring. Not officially, it was still February, but a warm wind blew through, melting snow and revealing brown grass underneath. The ranch came alive with the promise of renewal. And with the thaw came news from town. Pete returned from a supply run with gossip. Margaret had taken ill, pneumonia, the doctor said. She was in her house with a hired nurse, and the prognosis wasn't good. Eliza felt nothing. She'd spent 5 years wishing Margaret would disappear, and now that it was happening, all she felt was empty. You should visit her, Cole said that evening. Why would I do that? Because you're better than she is. Because if she dies and you never said goodbye, you might regret it. I won't regret it. Maybe not, but you should still go. Take the high ground. Eliza went, but only because Cole offered to come with her. They rode into town together, past stares and whispers, to Margaret's house. The hired nurse let them in. Margaret's bedroom was dim and close, smelling of sickness and bitter medicine. The woman in the bed looked diminished, smaller, older. All her vicious energy drained away. Eliza. Margaret's voice was a rasp. Come to gloat? No, I came because Cole thought I should. Of course he did. St. Cole Maddox. Margaret coughed, the sound wet and painful. Always doing the right thing. Eliza sat in the chair beside the bed, Cole standing behind her like a wall. Is there anything you need? Need? From you? Margaret laughed bitterly. You've taken everything already. Married into money, Got yourself a big ranch, left me here with nothing. You threw me out with nothing. I gave you a home for 5 years. You gave me hell for 5 years. Eliza's voice was steady. But I didn't come here to fight. I came to say that despite everything, I hope you recover. I hope you find some peace before the end. Margaret stared at her. Why? Why would you hope that after what I did to you? Because carrying hate takes energy I don't want to waste. Because my life is better when I'm not thinking about you. Eliza stood. And because my mother loved my father, and my father loved you, and that means something even if I don't understand it. She walked to the door, Cole following. Eliza, wait. She turned. Margaret's face had crumpled, tears tracking down her hollow cheeks. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. For all of it. Eliza stood there watching this woman who'd made her life a nightmare cry like a child. She could feel Cole's presence behind her, solid and supportive, whatever she chose. I don't forgive you, she said finally, but I accept your apology. That's the best I can do. Margaret nodded, her eyes closing. They left, stepping out into late afternoon sun. Eliza breathed deep, feeling lighter than she had in years. That was hard, Cole said. That was necessary. Eliza took his hand without thinking. Thank you for making me go. He squeezed her fingers. You did the right thing. Did I? I didn't forgive her. Forgiveness isn't owed. It's given freely or not at all. You were honest. That's what matters. They walked to the wagon in silence, hand in hand like a real married couple. And Eliza realized with a start, that's what they were becoming. Not the arrangement they'd started as, but something genuine. Margaret died 3 days later. Eliza attended the funeral. Another spectacle, another crowd. But this time she stood with Cole and Sam and the ranch hands, surrounded by people who chose to be there for her. The will reading brought a final surprise. Margaret had left everything, house, land, water rights, to the Red Hollow Ladies Benevolent Society, with one caveat. Eliza could buy the property at fair market value if she wished. It's a trap, Jack said when they heard. She's making you pay for what should have been yours. Maybe, Eliza said. Or maybe it's the closest thing to an apology she could manage. She and Cole discussed it that evening in his office. Do you want the land? He asked. I don't know. Do you? Not if it means draining our savings to get it. The water rights would be useful, but we'll manage without them. Our savings. Eliza turned the words over. When did my money become our money? When you became my wife. What's mine is yours, remember? You said that. I never quite believed it. Cole pulled out a ledger, showing her the ranch accounts. See for yourself. Your name's on everything now. The ranch, the accounts, all of it. You're not an employee anymore. You're a partner. Eliza stared at the pages, at her name written in Cole's careful handwriting beside his own. Legal proof that she mattered, that she had value, that someone saw her as an equal. We'll buy the land, she said suddenly. Not for the water rights, for me. Because it was my father's, and I want it back. Cole smiled. Then we'll buy it. They made an offer the next week. The Benevolent Society, shocked that Eliza had the means to purchase, had no choice but to accept. Within a month, the property, house, land, and precious water rights belonged to Eliza Maddox. She stood in her father's old house, now legally hers, and felt something inside her finally settle. This place had been a prison under Margaret's ownership. Now it would be something else. What do you want to do with it? Cole asked, standing in the doorway. Eliza looked around, at the worn floors, the peeling wallpaper, the rooms that held so many painful memories. I want to turn it into something good, something that helps people. What kind of people? The kind the town throws away. Girls like me, who end up with nowhere to go. Women running from bad situations. Anyone who needs a safe place to land. Cole's expression shifted. Surprise, then approval, then something deeper. A refuge. A home. Like you gave me. You'll need help running it. I know, but I think I can do it. Especially if I have a partner. You do. You have me. They spent the next 3 months transforming the house. Sam taught Eliza bookkeeping so she could manage finances. Jack and Pete helped repair the structure. Cole quietly spread word to neighboring towns that Red Hollow had a new resource for women in need. The first arrival came on a Tuesday in May. A young woman, barely 20, with a black eye and a frightened child clinging to her skirts. I heard there was a place, she said, her voice shaking. A place where women could be safe. Eliza looked at this stranger who could have been her in another life and felt purpose crystallize in her chest. There is. You're here. Come inside. By summer's end, the house held 6 women and 4 children, each with their own story of survival, each finding their footing in a place that asked nothing but honesty and effort. Red Hollow didn't know what to make of it. The same people who'd mocked Eliza now watched her manage a household that served a purpose they couldn't diminish. Some still whispered, some still judged, but more, slowly, grudgingly, began to nod when she passed on the street, began to donate old clothes and furniture, began to see her as something other than the outcast girl who'd married Cole Maddox out of desperation. One evening in August, Eliza and Cole sat on the porch of the main ranch house, watching the sun set over the pastures. The cattle dotted the landscape, the house behind them was full of life and laughter, and somewhere in town, 6 women were building new lives in a place that had once been Eliza's prison. "We did good," Cole said quietly. "We did, didn't we?" "You did. This was your vision. Your support made it possible." Eliza turned to look at him, this man who'd started as a stranger and become her anchor. "Cole, can I ask you something?" "Always." "When you proposed that marriage, did you think it would turn into this?" "Into what?" "Into us. Actually caring about each other." Cole was quiet for a moment, his profile sharp against the dying light. "I hoped it might, but I didn't expect it." He turned to meet her eyes. "I thought we'd be comfortable partners. Maybe friends. I didn't think I'd wake up every morning grateful you're in the room next to mine." Eliza's heart stuttered. "You're grateful? Completely? Entirely?" He reached for her hand. "I know we started this as an arrangement, a practical solution to an impossible problem, but somewhere along the way it became real for me. And if it hasn't for you, that's fine. I'll respect whatever boundaries you need. But I wanted you to know." Eliza looked at their joined hands, his large and scarred, hers smaller but just as worn. Evidence of lives lived through hard work and harder lessons. "It's real for me too," she said softly. "I think it has been for a while. I was just too scared to admit it. And now? Now I'm still scared, but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions." Cole stood, pulling her up with him. They stood face to face on the porch, the ranch quiet around them, the future spreading out like the land, uncertain but full of possibility. "Eliza Maddox," he said, "would you like to have a real marriage? Not an arrangement, not a convenience, but an actual partnership built on everything we've already created?" She smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Are you proposing to me again?" "I'm asking you to choose me. For real this time. I already chose you. That day in the sheriff's office, at the wedding, every day since." She stepped closer, her free hand finding his chest. "But yes. Yes to a real marriage. Yes to building something that lasts. Yes to you." He kissed her then. Not the brief, formal kiss from their wedding, but something deep and true and full of promise. The kind of kiss that said more than words ever could about futures and choices and 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I don't know when it happened, but it did. And I wanted you to know. I love you too, even though you're stubborn and difficult and you work too hard. Right back at you." They laughed, and it felt like freedom. 6 months later, Eliza stood in the kitchen of the main house, preparing Thanksgiving dinner for a crowd that had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. The ranch hands, of course. Sam, who'd become more grandfather than employee. Rachel Winters and her new husband, visiting from Denver. And women from the refuge house, each bringing their children and their slowly healing hearts. The kitchen that had once been her workspace had become her kingdom, a place where she created not just food, but community. Where broken people found nourishment and comfort and the strength to keep trying. Cole came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know everyone's waiting for you, right? Can't start the meal without the woman who made it. One more minute. I want to get the gravy perfect." "It's already perfect. You're stalling." He was right. She was stalling because the moment felt too big, too good, too much like everything she'd ever wanted and never thought she'd have. "What if I mess this up?" she whispered. What if I can't sustain this? What if it all falls apart? Then we'll pick up the pieces and start again. That's what we do. He kissed her temple. But it won't fall apart. You're too stubborn to let it. We're too stubborn. Even better. They walked into the dining room together, into the noise and warmth and chaos of people who'd chosen to be family. Jack was arguing good-naturedly with Pete about something. Sam was showing one of the children how to fold a napkin. Rachel was laughing at a story one of the refuge women was telling. And at the center of it all was Eliza, the girl who'd been humiliated at a Christmas social, who'd been thrown out in December with nowhere to go, who'd accepted a marriage of convenience and turned it into a love story. She wasn't the same person who'd brought elephant cookies to the Pritchard estate. That woman had been small and afraid, and convinced she deserved nothing. This woman, Mrs. Cole Maddox, knew her worth, knew that kindness wasn't weakness and that strength came in forms the town had never recognized, knew that sometimes the best revenge was building a life so full of purpose that the people who'd tried to destroy you became irrelevant. She looked around the table, at faces that ranged from weathered ranch hands to children just learning to hope again, and felt something swell in her chest that might have been pride or gratitude or simple joy. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "for choosing this messy, imperfect family we've built together." "To family," Cole said, raising his glass. "The kind we choose, not the kind we're born with." "To Eliza," Jack added, "who feeds us better than we deserve and puts up with us anyway." "To second chances," said one of the refuge women quietly, "and people who offer them." The toasts went around the table, each person adding their piece until the gratitude was layered thick as the snow that would soon cover the ranch. And Eliza, who'd once believed she was nothing, sat at the head of her own table and understood a truth that would carry her through every hard winter to come. Worth wasn't given by people who judged you. Worth wasn't inherited or earned through suffering. Worth was intrinsic, bone deep, impossible to diminish unless you let it be. She'd let it be diminished for too long. Never again. That night, after the guests had gone and the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Eliza stood at her bedroom window looking out over the ranch. Cole's arms came around her from behind, solid and sure. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Elephant cookies," she said. "And how strange it is that such a small thing changed everything." "It wasn't the cookies. It was you. Your courage to show up, to keep trying, to accept help when it was offered." "Our courage," she corrected. "You taught me that strength doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means knowing when to let people stand with you." "We taught each other." They stood together in the darkness, watching the stars emerge one by one above the land they'd claimed and the life they'd built. And Eliza thought about the girl she'd been, the one who'd believed love and safety were things that happened to other people. She'd been wrong. Love was what happened when two imperfect people chose each other every single day. Safety was what you built with honesty and boundaries and the willingness to fight for something worth keeping. And home, real home, wasn't a place or a name or even a locked door. Home was this moment, this man, this choice to keep choosing kindness over bitterness, hope over despair, growth over the comfortable safety of staying small. "Cole?" she said softly. "Yeah?" "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for becoming someone worth building a life with. I was always worth it. I just didn't know." "No," he agreed, his arms tightening around her. "But you know now, and that's what matters." They stood together as the night deepened, two people who'd started as strangers and become each other's home. The ranch spread out around them, land and livestock and people who depended on them. But more than that, it was possibility. Proof that cruelty didn't have to win. That kindness could be revolutionary. That a woman with nothing could become everything. Not because someone saved her, but because she saved herself, accepted help when it was offered, and built something beautiful from the wreckage of what she'd survived. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered.